I'm here with actor, author, you name it. He's uses his power of celebrity for a ton of good causes. Thank you so much, Dan, for sitting down with me. I'm very appreciative.
My pleasure.
So let's talk a little bit about when you first decided you wanted to enter the entertainment business as an actual goal for a career.
That was a very long time ago. I can't remember. Maybe in high school, maybe right after college. In college, I went to Vassar College, upstate New York, and I was not a theater major, but I was very involved in the program, and I took a semester at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center. They had a semester called the National Theater Institute, and it was an immersive program. And in the middle of that program, they had real industry professionals from New York come up to talk to everybody about making the step to wanting to be a professional actor and what that would mean, and meeting real casting directors and taking real pictures, and that made it very real for me in my head. And I think around that time, this is a long time ago, they were looking for a replacement for Matthew Broderick in Neil Simon's Biloxi Blues on Broadway.
Okay.
And so I got an opportunity to meet the casting directors of that at a time when I, age-wise and look-wise, would make sense for that play. And they knew I was still in college, and there was a moment where I was going to leave school and just take the plunge in New York, and they were encouraging me to finish college. They're like, this isn't going anywhere. This business isn't going anywhere. You've got another year to go. It would behoove you to finish college. And it was really good advice, because I could have very easily been seduced to just leave and be like, I could finish college some other time.
Right.
And I probably never
And
would
then you never go back,
So then I graduated. By the time I graduated Vassar, I knew I was going to come to New York, and I knew I was going to pursue at least an acting career in the theater, which I did with a vengeance. I also was, at that time, I thought I was going to sing and dance and be on Broadway, and I was taking dance classes twice a week and voice lessons twice a week and an acting class, and I was waiting tables. I could not have been more of a cliche of the out-of-work actor. I was taking any job I could, and I was getting backstage every week, and that was really at 22 was me entering into this business in a very intense way.
Was there any trepidation on your part in the beginning because you were so new, or you were just gung-ho and you were doing
I was gung-ho, and I was driven, and I was obsessive, and I would, I had some ridiculous things that I did that make me embarrassed now, but I was relentless. I would walk up and talk about pounding pavement. At that time, and probably still now, all of the talent agency offices and casting offices, for the most part, are within 20 city blocks around the Broadway, the Midtown area. There are exceptions, where there were back then. But you could walk into some buildings on 57th Street and some on 45th Street and tackle 6 different agencies. And I would slide my picture and resume under the doors of those offices, not in an envelope.
Just
face up. No, face up, because I had read somewhere or heard somewhere, or someone gave me the tip, or maybe I thought of it in my sleep. But that if they have to see your picture when they're stepping over it or onto it to throw it in the trash, at least they saw your picture. Whereas if they just get these unsolicited envelopes, they wind up in the trash.
Very sound thinking.
Whether it leads to stardom or not, whether it leads to a job or not, I don't think so.
I'm pretty sure you're doing something right, because you are a huge star.
Well, these are many, many, many years ago, and so I slowly but surely wound up doing a bunch of things. I also learned very quickly that I was not the dancer I thought I was, or the singer I thought I was. And I started focusing on the acting and on comedy, and I was writing. I was taking a Groundlings class, and I was writing material that I could perform, which was probably a pivotal moment where I knew, and I'd have to say that the key to almost everything that's happened to me has been about pivoting. It's been about knowing when to take an opportunity that may not have been exactly what I wanted, but was adjacent.
Was comedy something you were comfortable in when you started out? Did you feel like you had a natural knack for that?
It was. I mean, I was always sort of a comedic. I responded to comedy. I liked doing comedic plays. I wound up getting my equity card in a production of Broadway Bound, which is Neil Simon. I loved Woody Allen and Neil Simon, and I guess that New York Jewish comedy thing was inside of me in a very easy way. But I didn't really set out to be a writer, but I have to say that the path to writing material for myself to perform became my path to becoming a writer. And becoming a writer, oddly enough, became my path to Los Angeles, became my path to writing for television, became my path to writing a movie that I starred in. It gave me the power in a way to be the master of my own creative journey, as opposed to only waiting for someone to give me an opportunity. And look, I talk about this very openly. I wound up, in LA, I wound up getting on a couple of television shows, but more than anything, I spent 20 years doing other things in pursuit of other areas of the business. And 20 years after, when I wanted to have a particular kind of success, that success came. And it's 20 years. I mean, people always ask, like, what does it take? And I'm like, it takes being stupid enough or smart enough to be willing to stick it out. And for some people, it's stupid enough to wait that long. And for some people, it's, I was obviously doing other things in the meantime.
You weren't just sitting around.
I wasn't sitting around. I was writing, and I became a writer for TV, and I became a producer with Lisa Kudrow, and I made a movie. But I found other avenues for my creative, I guess, the storytelling bug that I had, and it served me. I was also a voice-over actor. Like, I think if any advice I give to anybody who's starting out is always about diversity. Anything else you can do, you should do. It doesn't mean quit, but if you can, quit, because it's extremely difficult. But if you won't quit, then every other thing you think you can do, you should do, because you never know how those things might lead you down the right path.
Now that you're in the position of higher level of fame than you were when you started, there's a whole new advent of things to star in, whether it be on streaming and creating your own opportunities. Do you think you had it harder then than they do now, or is it's kind of the same, just there's just more opportunity?
That's a good question. It is easier to create your own content now. It's harder to get it seen. So when you were someone creating your own way back in the day, there were less platforms, but you emerged as something of an anomaly. You were like, oh, this is interesting. This actor wrote this thing and is starring in it. Now everybody is creating content. It's as easy as recording on a phone and posting it somewhere. Everyone is creating content, and the number of platforms is in the thousands. And so on the one hand, there are outlets for your creativity. You can put yourself in something, you can create your own material, but it has become extremely difficult to get it seen. As a creator of content, let's say on a higher level, on a bigger scale, I'm selling to the big platforms, my company sells to the big platforms. The competition is ferocious. I've never seen anything like it. You can have a beautiful script and an enormous star attached to it, and it doesn't mean what it used to. It's like, okay, so do 300 other people. And there used to be a time where everybody's chasing something called undeniability. So you want content to be undeniable. And back in the day, to make it undeniable, it would be really well written from somebody with a reputation, a director with a reputation's attached, an actor with a reputation is attached. That made it undeniable. Like, how could someone say, no, it's got Julianne Moore, and it's being directed by, David Fincher, and this is a slam dunk. There are no slam dunks anymore. And that has made it more difficult. On the other hand, the playing field has leveled a little bit more, so more unknowns emerge because there are opportunities for their little pieces of content.
Their niche, Do you feel that it's kind of evened out? You mentioned people who are just coming up, but for people who are well established, do you feel that they're taking roles that back when you started may have been quote unquote beneath them, like a movie star doing television or even a movie star doing a web series at this point,
Right.
streaming.
It just depends. I think when movie stars doing television now is not about doing stuff beneath them. I think it's about the fact that some of the best content that's being created right now is being created for multiple platforms. The feature world is become very narrow.
Yeah.
There are enormous franchise movies and there are tiny indies, but the days of 5 or 6 movies, a romantic comedy as well as an action movie, as well as a horror movie, as well as an animated movie, all coming out every Friday, those days are over.
Yeah.
And the actors, the movie stars, are finding really interesting, well-written roles that don't eat up all of their time on television platforms.
Yeah.
So the Julia Roberts and the Julianne Moores and the Reese Witherspoons, and they're all doing television, or what we call television. Television's no longer
It's not just a box
it's
anymore. Yeah.
now wherever it is that content is going to get to your eyes. So on the one hand, there's that. On the other hand, because of that, there are many well-known actors who are not working. And so that creates a scenario where many of them look for opportunities that maybe 10 years ago they wouldn't have taken. But now it's work and it's a shot, and you never know.
Right,
You
right.
never know that this could be the thing.
And with that, like the advent of Netflix, I didn't watch Scandal when it was on television. I came into it 8 years later, and it's just like, thank God I was watching on Netflix, because you want to keep going.
And you can. Then you can watch a show like that, which was so unbelievably bingeable. That was a very unique show because it was like that soap opera pace.
Yeah.
That bingeability was happening even on a show that was airing once a week.
Right.
And we were using social media at that time to hook audiences and keep them engaged until next Thursday, until
Right.
next Thursday, until next Thursday. And then, of course, people were watching full seasons.
Yeah.
And now are watching full seasons of so many shows.
Or full series at this point.
On the app of that network,
Yeah.
I watch shows now on the ABC app, on the
Same.
NBC app, on CBS app. We are watching our content in a very different way,
Yeah.
and more voraciously and more quickly,
Right.
which creates more need for more content, which is a good thing.
Right. Even shows like Schitt's Creek that didn't have that much of a following on Pop, and then
No.
it gets put on Netflix, and it's like, where's the show been everyone's lives? And
That's
it's just
right.
like, it's crazy. A lot of times when I'm interviewing actors who direct and produce and stuff, when you were writing in between, you're blowing up famously acting-wise, did you use your voice as an actor, since that's where you came from, to write? Was it a little bit easier? Kind of like when a director kind of knows his direction based on his acting?
Yeah, I think I've always been a writer to some degree, and I certainly, I don't know how to answer that, because there's lots of actors who write and they don't necessarily have an affinity for it.
Right.
It doesn't come easy to them. And there are lots of writers who don't act, who are great at dialogue, and
Yeah.
almost as though it's natural to them. I was an improvisational actor early on, which is a process of writing. You're writing on your feet very quickly in a scene with someone,
Right.
so that was certainly helpful. I think that there are benefits to knowing what's performable, knowing what's emotionally, appealing about a character or about a scene. Those are things that I think being an actor helps. But I don't know. I use a different part of my brain when I'm writing.
Do you?
And certainly I use a different part of my brain when I'm acting. It's hard for me to shake the producer when I'm acting. I'm involved in a new show, Baker and the Beauty, which is a pilot I just did. And, I am used to being behind the camera as much as I'm used to being in front of the camera. And there are times where I'm aware of what we're shooting and what
Right.
we're doing and things that I would do differently if I were producing it. But it's almost a relief to me, much like when I know I have a babysitter that I trust with my kids, and I can go out at night and not think or worry about how it's all happening.
Right.
Similarly, when you are involved in something creative and other people have got it, they're covered,
Yeah.
they know, we're going to make our day, and you're going to look good, and we know what we're doing, and it's going to be handled. There's a letting go, which helps me as an actor. So I do compartmentalize pretty well.
Great. And you wrote a book.
Mm-hmm.
What was that process like for you? And was it in any way something that you had planned on doing? Did somebody bring the idea to you?
I did not plan on doing that. I had become a dad through adoption with my husband, and I was invited to be part of a group of writers and actors who were telling original stories that you wouldn't read about in a parent magazine.
Right.
Like the good, the ugly, the unlikable about being a parent.
Yeah.
The stories that you would be embarrassed to tell people at a party but were funny.
Yeah.
And so I was part of this performance series for several years. And over the course of those years, I would write a different piece to perform that kind of reflected a different stage of my parenthood, from the birth of my daughter to her being 1, to her being 2, to her entering preschool, to play dates. Like, as time went on, my stories to perform were kind of telling a chronology of what my experience was as a parent. So when I had amassed about 6 or 7 of these essays that were performed, I put together an evening in Hollywood where I invited a lot of my friends and colleagues to hear me perform, let's just say 6 of them in a 1-hour night. And I wanted really them to tell me whether they thought that what I had on my hands was the beginnings of a play, the beginnings of a performance piece, or the beginnings of a book.
That's an interesting way to go about it.
And at that point, I didn't know. I was like, I've got a little kid at home. Am I really going? I've got 2. Am I really going to go on the road performing a one-man show across the country? Like, it didn't seem like it was practical. Also, one-person shows famously are not lucrative,
Right.
Nor of necessarily writing books. But for that matter, it just didn't seem practical. While I loved performing these original pieces, it seemed more and more like the beginnings of a book. So I took the steps of sending those 7 or 8 essays and a proposal for more to a book agent at my agency. And they sent out this whole package to dozens of publishers, all of whom passed, all of them, and except for one. And then the ones who published my book were the ones who
Maybe that was the right fit then, and you had to.
It was just the
end
right.
up where you end up fate-wise.
I did. It was with an imprint of Simon & Schuster called Touchstone Books, and my editor had just had a kid, and his boss had just had a kid, and there was something about the stories that spoke to them, and then ultimately allowed me to publish the book. That the process of writing the rest of the book, which I had to do in a relatively short amount of time, was incredibly cathartic.
Yeah.
It was just pouring my guts onto pages, and the more fearful I was of writing the things I was writing, the more I knew I was probably pushing myself in the right direction. So
I just ordered it today, so I'm very excited to get it tomorrow.
So
when you get your 1 cent residual or whatever, however much you get in a book deal, then you
don't really get.
you go out.
Well, I'm thanking you in advance. It's also available on audiobook, and I narrate the book.
Oh,
and
do you?
Because many
I'll
of the
have to pick that
pieces
up.
had been meant to be performed.
Yeah.
It reads well, but
gonna have to go
mostly
back and
for
order
people
that
who
then.
sit in the car a lot or on the trains to listen
That's
to.
exactly what I do. Commute from Jersey.
So it's a.
I think I'm going to order the audiobook
I
too.
call it a 23 flush book because it's good
Yeah.
to sit on the toilet also.
Oh.
So over 23 days, you can read a chapter a day.
Are you saying your book's shitty, Dan?
It's not a shitty book,
but you can shit while you're
you
reading
can
it.
shit while you're reading it.
What would you consider your big break, quote unquote? Or something that you feel got you noticed to propel you to where you are today?
There are 2 pivotal moments. I mean, I don't think I ever had a big break. I think I was deluded into thinking that that's how it worked, and I still am, by the way.
Yeah.
I still am deluded into thinking like, oh, this is it. This is my ticket. There are no tickets. There's a bunch of little tickets, but there's always another one.
Yeah.
No, but the 2 big moments. One was when I wrote and produced and starred in my movie All Over the Guy. It was 2000. It came out in 2001. And it was at a time when small little independent movies about with a gay romantic lead, and we call it, it was sort of, we joked that it was like When Harry Met Larry, right? It was just a really likable, relatable romantic comedy that just happened to have two men as the leads. That experience of making that movie, selling that movie, and having it come out in theaters was the first time I ever experienced the press the way I had to for the first time, recognizability, talking about a piece that I had written that was semi-autobiographical, that had me out in public, both out in public and also out in public in a way that had not before. And it also launched a writing career for me, because I used the movie as the inspiration for a sitcom pilot that I sold to ABC, which we did not make. But that began a TV career that I continue. I've written dozens of pilots over the last 12, 13 years, much because when my movie came out, it got me attention as a writer as much as it did as an actor.
Yeah.
So that was the first. And then, a decade later, Scandal.
What do you think resonated with viewers of Scandal for you to become so well liked and well received? I mean, the character was very well liked. Obviously, a big part of that is because of the way you portrayed him.
Well, it was a character that was beloved by so many because he represented somebody who, at least for as long as he could, seemed untarnished, seemed to have a goal of being a parent, where no other characters in the world of that show were really aspiring to marriage and family in the way that James was.
Yeah.
That even married to a monster like Cyrus, there was this guy who just wanted a home and a baby, and I, oddly enough, I was a character that resonated with black women in a way that I never imagined. And I think a lot of it had to do with connecting to the maternal in me, and with that black daughter.
Yes.
That image was something that resonated with so many women in general, but that community in particular, which was such a thrill for me.
Right.
I think James was a little drop of goodness in that show, where everybody was capable of evil.
Yeah.
It was part of what was being posited by the show. The show was what in a way the thesis of the show was: is there such thing as good and evil? Are we not all capable of evil?
Right.
Does anyone wear a white hat? And that question and that imagery lasted for 7 seasons.
Yeah.
And everyone's ability to turn, or to be disloyal, or to do something evil in service to what they believed was right, was one of the great questions of that series. And James fell prey to that also. So I think people loved him because of how he humanized Cyrus.
Were you disappointed when you found out you were being killed off, or had you had an idea about it earlier than it actually happened?
I had an idea that it was possible.
Yeah.
Because everyone could be killed on that show, and on many of those kinds of shows. Your own death is something you fear in every script. Is this my week? But I was devastated.
So were the
I was
viewers.
devastated.
I'm not gonna lie, I was pissed.
I was.
And especially the way that it happened was.
It was perfect, though. It happened in a way that got the maximum impact from its viewers. Now having had years of distance,
Right.
My character would have either had to become a regular on that show, which I wasn't ever,
Right.
in a bigger way with a larger role, and I feel like there weren't really enough stories. I think James's storylines were repeating themselves anyway. Over the course of the 2 years that he was actively with Cyrus, there was a lot of close calls. There was a lot of moments where Cyrus, I think at the end of season 2, Cyrus calls off the hit on his husband, and then 1 year later, the Publius storyline did James in.
Yeah.
But there was already the smells of James's demise. But I had reached a point, I had just won the Emmy. It was September, October, November, December. I had 4 more months until my character was shot. And during that time, I was so enjoying the feeling of family that had been created by that show.
Right.
It was something I feel like I've been chasing my whole life. And oftentimes when I get on a show, from 24 to Marry Me to now Baker and the Beauty, I love the feeling of family, the secondary family you create with a cast.
Yeah.
So it was very hard for me to get over it.
What was that like, being nominated and then ultimately winning an award by your peers for your career?
You know,
for that role?
it was something. To be honest with you, with all the dreams I've had over my career of just working, I really never. I mean, I guess when you're a kid, you imagine what your Oscar speech might be like, but I never really imagined something like that was possible.
Yeah.
So the nomination blew me away. That was like a pinch me moment I will never forget. Winning, of course, is the gravy on the cake.
Yeah.
But where you don't believe a nomination's even possible in the likelihood of just the odds and the competition, and it's like winning a lottery, right?
Right.
There was a feeling of that when I was nominated. Once you're nominated, you certainly know it's possible to win. So it's a different kind of pinch me moment, which I certainly had. I almost passed out. But it's not like the win is out of the realm of your brain, whereas a nomination, I think, was kind of out of the realm of my brain.
Yeah. So it was almost, you were happy enough being nominated and surprised
I
enough being
was.
nominated.
I mean,
and then
did I
icing
love
was-
winning? Yes,
Yeah.
but
They'll come take it back if you don't say that.
It was the I think that getting the nomination was like the thing. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
It was just completely shocking to me.
What do you attribute your longevity in the medium to? Is it because you're so likable? And I feel like, obviously I don't know you personally, but I feel like the likability that comes across from you across television and film is also the same likability that you're actually like that in real life. Not in terms of like that you make it look easy, but I just feel like you're not one of those diva type personalities.
You know, I don't know. I can't really be a good judge of my own character. I know that I work very, very hard to get along with people. I know how valued it is to be a team player, to be respectful of coworkers, to be grateful for the moments we have wins, because there are so few of them.
Yeah.
There are so few of them. Whatever Instagram stories or whatever people's perceptions are of success and fame, that is only what you're being seen, what you're being shown.
Right.
The number of kicks that one must endure at every level. And
Right.
I guarantee you Brad Pitt has had his kicks, and Julianne Moore's had her kicks, and Meryl Streep has had her. You know, there are many, many, many disappointments.
Right.
And we don't publicize them, and the world doesn't know those as much. But understanding a level of gratitude for being able to work in this industry is something that I certainly have. I complain a lot. I certainly go through periods of time where I wish I were working and I don't. I have periods of jealousy. I'm like everybody else. But I know, having worked as a producer and as a writer and as a director and as an actor, I have a perspective, I think, that has helped me in other areas.
Yeah.
But I don't always play. I played a bit of a jerk in that movie Second Act with J-Lo. I like to play villains. I like to play characters who are not just so easy to peg.
Yeah. Deirdre Friel actually told me to tell you hello. I just interviewed her on Wednesday.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, she's great. She
Yeah.
is so great.
Yeah, she likes
I
you too.
enjoy working with her. So I don't know. I certainly hope that there's a likability factor. I know I have relationships I have built over. I'm older than I look, and I've been doing this a really long time. So I've built relationships, and I think that helps. But ultimately, you know, there are ways in which you want to branch out into areas that you haven't, and I certainly aspire to do that. I'd love to play characters that normally you wouldn't think of me for. That's getting people to think of you in ways that they normally don't is the hardest thing.
Yeah.
Because they know you as the likable gay dad,
Right.
and so they'll put you in that as often as they can.
Yeah. Nobody likes to be typecast either.
So when you have, and I've been really lucky because I've been able to play gay characters that are not just what I call IGH, which is insert gay here. You know, I like playing characters who are complicated.
Yeah.
My character on 24 was so interesting. Like, I didn't even know the character was gay until the second episode, and he was, you know, had a relationship, but was also trying to avert a world crisis and there was a lot to play there. That's far more interesting and layered than just being the neighbor who comes in with a quippy comment and a snappy suit. I have been allowed to wear really snappy clothes over the years, and Baker and the Beauty will be no different.
Yeah.
But even Baker and the Beauty is an interesting kind of, I'm playing a character that was played in the Israeli version, which is currently on Amazon and great, by an actor very different from me, who's used to playing villains, and that character is kind of a jerk.
Yeah.
And I liked the idea that I get to play someone who could be a jerk but may have a softer side, and that you get to play both.
Yeah, a jerk as in like sarcastic and and
ruthless.
Like snippy.
Yeah, I'm the manager of the character played by Nat Kelly. The character's a bit of a jerk because he's protective of the character who plays the Beauty. She's a very, very famous Paris Hilton kind of character. She has her own brand. She's very wealthy. She's extremely famous. She's the daughter of a hotel billionaire. It's a lot like Paris Hilton.
Yeah.
And her manager is very protective of her. And so anybody who gets in the way of that, he has no tolerance for. And that level of ruthless impatience is really fun to play. And then to find the humanity inside of that is going to be fun to play.
Well, I feel like that's kind of not your niche, but I feel you bring the humanity out in everyone that you play. That's what I was talking about, the likability. That's what I meant.
Yeah, I think it would be hard. I mean, that's one reason I'm so attracted to the idea of getting to play some villain in like a Marvel movie, because there doesn't have to be a soft, vulnerable side. You can just play sheer evil and surprise the audience because they're used to you being like the nice guy, But that said, yes, there's so much of your real life or your real personality and history that you bring to every role anyway, that it's hard to keep it out.
What role would you say was the most challenging for you? Whether, obviously don't spill tea, if it was like because of personalities behind the set or just because you felt it more challenging for your own personal reason.
Each role posed its own challenges. 24 was really hard because I was playing a character who was an expert in a field that I knew nothing about. And so learning what it was like to be a technological wizard in a Homeland Security type office in Washington was challenging. But I'd say far and beyond the acting challenge of my career was probably Scandal.
Yeah.
Only because it pushed me in ways, emotional ways, that I didn't think, that I wasn't sure I was capable of, and I had to really push myself.
Since you're so comfortable being in Washington, would you please go help us out in that place, or will you just incinerate upon going in there?
I don't know.
We could use some more people like you.
I don't know how to even. Sadly, I find it so deeply disheartening what we're going through as a nation, and there's so little I feel I can personally do to protect my kids, who are the next generation that will have to live with both what we've done to our environment and what we've done to to the word democracy and to the words in our Constitution, which have probably never actually been read by our president. I find it so unbelievably chilling that in many ways I can only focus on the pod, the bubble of my kids, my life, the decisions I make on a day-to-day basis. I don't know. I have to find the political activist in me again, because right now it feels beaten down.
Yeah. I just finished Dustin Lance Black's book.
Yeah.
And it was really, really moving.
Oh, okay.
So
I'll check it out.
Yeah. Well, Dan, thank you so much for sitting down with me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for
Sorry,
having
the
me.
accommodations were not
It's
the most
okay.
ideal.
It's okay. It's nice and empty now.
Roll with, of course, now that we're done, right? Everyone's
right.
done talking.
It's okay.
But it'll be great. You were a real pleasure.
Thank you.
It was such a privilege to interview you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.